Sometimes, the truth is stranger than fiction. Slight pause, tone, intrigue, and today, we're diving into 3 stories that prove it. But before we begin, if you're a fan of the strange, the dark, and the mysterious, told in story format, slight suspense, you've come to the right place. That's all we do here. And we upload 3, sometimes 4 times, every single week. So, if that's your kind of thing, please offer to teach the like button how to drive your car. And then, on the day of their first lesson, show up in an 18-speed semi-tractor trailer truck. Light chuckle. Also subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss one of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. It's just after midnight. June 22 ND, 1991. Charles Holden is on his way home from work when he decides to stop at a little fast food place near his home in Harrington, Delaware. After grabbing a quick bite, he walks back to his truck, climbs in, and turns the key. The engine rumbles to life. He's about to pull out of the lot when he sees something. A man running toward him, waving his arms, trying to flag him down. Charles hesitates, slips the gear back into park, and rolls down his window. The stranger leans in, breathing heavily, and says his sister is having a baby. He needs a ride to the hospital 20 minutes away. Immediately, something feels wrong. Tone, cautious, it's late. Charles doesn't know this man. And deep down, a bad feeling creeps in. He shakes his head. Sorry, it's too late. I've got to get home. That's too far out of my way. The stranger's shoulders slump. He turns and starts walking away. Charles watches him go, guilt gnawing at him. Finally, he calls out, "Hey, come back. I'll take you part of the way." The man's face lights up. He hops in the passenger seat, and they take off. Charles drives about 3 miles before pulling to the side of the road. "This is as far as I'm going," he says. His home is just a block away, and he doesn't want to go farther, not this late at night. But the stranger freezes. His expression twists into anger. His hand dives into his pocket, fumbling for something. Maybe a knife, maybe worse. His voice explodes. "Hand over your keys, your wallet, or I'll kill you." Charles's instincts kick in. Tone, urgent. Without thinking, he shuts off the engine, rips the keys from the ignition, throws open the door, and bolts. In the distance, a convenience store. He sprints toward it. But the sound of footsteps, fast ones, pound behind him. He glances back. The man is chasing him, screwdriver in hand, gaining with every stride. Charles realizes he's not going to make it to the store in time. He stops, turns, hands up. Okay. I'll give you a ride, anywhere you want. Then you can take my keys, my wallet, anything." The stranger slows, grinning now, pleased with himself. He pokes Charles in the side with the screwdriver, motioning toward the truck. They walk back together, Charles in front, the man behind, that screwdriver jabbing into his back every few steps. When they reach the truck, the stranger orders Charles to get in and wait. But the moment Charles's seatbelt clicks, he fires up the engine and floors it. The truck surges forward. In his rearview mirror, he sees the man sprinting after him, screwdriver raised high. But after a few steps, the stranger stops, turns, and walks away. Charles's chest is pounding, relief washing over him. He'd escaped. He thought about calling the police, but in the end decided he. She was slowly making her way down the steps, probably wondering what all the noise was. Gilbert froze for a moment, just staring at her. Then, without warning, he lunged forward and attacked. Dorothy didn't stand a chance. In the struggle, she was stabbed again and again until she collapsed. When she stopped moving, Gilbert dragged her body into the bedroom, leaving a dark trail of blood on the floor. He pulled the covers over her, almost as if to hide what he had done, and then ransacked the house, searching for anything he could take. Meanwhile, just outside, Charles was still talking with the officer, completely unaware that his own mother had already been murdered just a short distance away. When the officer climbed the stairs and saw Dorothy's lifeless body lying there, he froze for a split second. It was a horrific sight. Her eyes were open, her skin pale, and the room carried that heavy, suffocating stillness that only death brings. The officer's voice was tight when he called it in, requesting backup immediately. Charles was devastated when he heard the news. Moments earlier, he had been relieved, even thankful that his strange encounter with Gilbert Cannon had ended without injury. Now, That relief was replaced by crushing guilt and grief. The man who had threatened him, who he had driven just a few miles from his home, had walked straight to his mother's house and taken her life. Gilbert Cannon was eventually caught and convicted. But for Charles, the knowledge of what happened that night never faded. He had replayed the moment in his mind over and over. The first time he saw Gilbert running toward his truck, the decision to give him a ride, the choice to let him out near his home. Sometimes, the smallest twists of fate can change everything. And for Charles Holden, one split-second decision meant the difference between an uneasy escape and the greatest tragedy of his life. Gilbert later told police that the attack on Charles had been completely random. He said he was just sitting at this fast food restaurant, saw Charles get into his truck, and thought to himself, "If I can get into that guy's truck, I can rob him." That was it. No plan, no target, just an impulsive decision. After the failed robbery, Gilbert wandered the streets, looking for a place to sleep. He broke into a house, hoping to find shelter for the night. But then, a woman appeared at the top of the stairs. Fearing she would recognize him, he panicked and attacked her with a screwdriver. He had no idea who she was. He didn't know her name, her family, or her connection to Charles Holden. But in a cruel twist of fate, this woman, Dorothy, was Charles's mother. The entire night had been one long, horrific coincidence. Gilbert Cannon would later plead guilty to murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 1949, a 15-year-old troublemaker named Ken Rex McElroy dropped out of school and moved to the small farming town of Skidmore, Missouri. That's where his real life of crime began. At night, Rex would drive his truck onto people's property, stealing livestock, alcohol, grain, food, antiques, anything he could sell. If the owners caught him, he would simply raise his rifle and tell them to go back inside, or he'd kill them. Rex was a huge man, 270 pounds, with a reputation for violence. People believed him when he threatened them. Most never reported his crimes. On the rare occasions when victims went to the police, Rex would intimidate them, parking outside their homes all night, watching them, or walking right up and promising to kill them if they testified. And if intimidation didn't work, he used his stolen money to hire one of the best defense lawyers in the state, a man who had represented the mob. With him on Rex's side, charges almost never stuck, even the time Rex actually shot a property owner who had caught him in the act. By the 1970s, Rex wasn't just using fear to make money. He was using it to prey on young women. When he was in his 40s, he began stalking a local girl named Trina. She was 12 years old. He assaulted her over and over. When her family decided to press charges, Rex retaliated, burning down their house, killing their dog, and threatening to kill the entire family unless they signed papers legally marrying Trina to him. Under that twisted arrangement, she would have to live with him, and it would make it harder to prosecute him. Within 2 years, Trina was pregnant. After giving birth, she tried to escape, taking her baby and running back to her family's new home. Rex found her. He dragged her and the baby back, burned down her family's house again, and killed their new dog. By the end of the 1970s, Rex McElroy was the most hated man in Skidmore, and no one seemed able to stop him. Then, in 1980, a single piece of candy changed everything. One of Rex's children was caught stealing from a local grocery store. The shopkeeper, a 70-year-old man named Bo, told the child to put it back. The kid refused, and an argument erupted. When Rex found out, he wasn't angry at his child. He was furious at Bo. He began stalking Bo and his family, parking outside their house at night with a gun across his lap, even firing shots into the air. In broad daylight, he would walk right up to Bo and tell him, "I'm going to kill you." In July of that year, Rex finally made his move. He arrived at Bo's grocery store carrying a shotgun. Bo was in the back, loading groceries. When he turned around, Rex was standing there. Words were exchanged. Voices rose. And then Rex raised the shotgun and fired, hitting Bo in the neck. Miraculously, Bo survived. Rex was arrested and charged with attempted murder. For a moment, it seemed like justice might finally catch up to him. But the charge was reduced to assault. He was sentenced to 2 years and served 1 day before being released on bond. When he walked out of jail, he went straight home, grabbed a rifle with a bayonet attached, and went to the local tavern. There, in front of witnesses, he bragged in graphic detail about how he was going to finish the job. City leaders had finally had enough of Rex. After countless threats and years of intimidation, they decided to hold a secret meeting the following morning, one Rex wouldn't know about. When the sun came up, dozens of angry residents filled the small town hall, quietly discussing the problem no one seemed able to solve. The police had failed them. Politicians had failed them. Nothing could be done through the system. So they came up with their own plan. When the meeting ended, men silently walked out of the building, each heading home to grab a gun. By late morning, about 40 armed townsmen positioned themselves around the tavern where Rex had been spotted earlier. Once everyone was in place, a smaller group entered the bar. There he was, sitting at the counter with Trina beside him. The men closed in behind him, standing so close he could feel the weight of their presence. Rex turned, ready to lash out, but stopped. He was badly outnumbered, and these men were not bluffing. Trying to keep his swagger, Rex stood, grabbed Trina, and pushed past them toward the door. Outside, he froze. Even more armed men stood silently waiting. The bravado slipped from his face, replaced with a flicker of fear. He led Trina to his truck, lit a cigarette, started the engine, and prepared to drive off. A single gunshot rang out. Rex collapsed forward onto the steering wheel. In seconds, men rushed to the passenger side, pulled Trina out to safety, and backed away. Then the others closed in on the truck, unleashing a storm of gunfire that lasted nearly 20 seconds. When it was over, no one moved to call for help. The town bully was dead. 46 witnesses were there that day, yet every one of them claimed they didn't see who fired the shots. Despite a federal investigation, the story never changed, and no one was ever charged. Years later, when asked about it, one Skidmore resident simply said, "That man needed killing." On the morning of March 18, 1990, Karen pulled her car up outside the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. The unassuming brick exterior hid over 15,000 priceless works of art from around the world. Inside, the building was a maze of elegant galleries and a stunning open-air courtyard that seemed to breathe life into the space. Karen, a security guard for the museum and an avid art lover, was there to relieve the night shift. She approached the employee entrance, pressed the buzzer, and announced herself. But there was no reply. After a pause, she buzzed again. Still silence. Confused, she left the doorway and found a nearby pay phone, calling the chief of security at home. Within minutes, he arrived, took her around the building, and led her up an exterior staircase to another entrance. From his heavy ring of keys, he found the right one and unlocked the door. They stepped inside into a dim hallway stretching out before them. At the far end, a brightly lit room sat with its door wide open, the security office where the night guards should have been. Together, they began walking toward it, unaware of the scene they were about to discover. "Okay, I can rewrite this for you so it's voiceover friendly, with natural emotions, pacing, and pronunciation cues, while keeping the story exactly the same. I'll remove filler like YouTube outros, and shape it into a human-like narration with suspense and tension where needed." Karen and the chief walked quickly down the hallway, determined to find the security guards and get an explanation for why they hadn't buzzed her in. But when they reached the end of the hall and looked into the office, it was empty. Up close, they noticed something else. The door to the security office had been smashed open. The doorknob lay on the floor, broken clean off. Right in front of them, a metal crowbar. And above, the only camera that could have captured what happened in that hallway had been turned to face the wall. Karen and the chief exchanged a glance. They both knew they had stumbled into something bad. They didn't know what, or if someone was still inside. They didn't know where the guards were. The chief picked up the crowbar for protection, and the two ran inside to call the police. What they didn't realize was that they had just uncovered the scene of one of the most famous crimes in history. The night before, 23-year-old security guard Rick Abath trudged toward the employee entrance. He and another young guard, Randy, were working the overnight shift. Rick hated this job. It was boring, but he didn't have many other options. He had dropped out of music school and spent most of his time smoking marijuana, drinking beer, and playing in a band with his friends. Inside, Rick found Randy already behind the desk. After a quick chat, Rick volunteered to do the first security rounds. He grabbed a walkie-talkie, a flashlight, and headed into the dimly lit exhibit halls. Almost immediately, a fire alarm went off. Rick hurried to the source, but found no fire. Just another glitch. The building was old, and false alarms weren't uncommon. He shut it off and kept moving. 30 minutes later, Rick returned to the office and switched places with Randy. Rick sat behind the desk, while Randy began his patrol. Half an hour passed. Rick, head resting on the desk, was startled by the sound of the outside buzzer. He looked at the security monitor and saw 2 police officers standing outside. He pressed the intercom. "Hey, can I help you?" The officers said they were responding to a disturbance call and asked to be let in. Rick didn't know what was going on. Maybe it was about the earlier fire alarm. Maybe someone had reported suspicious activity outside. Either way, it seemed important enough to break protocol, which strictly forbade letting anyone inside after hours, even police. So Rick buzzed them in. The 2 officers walked down the hall to the security office window, where Rick sat. "Are you working alone tonight?" one asked. "No," Rick replied. "My partner's out doing rounds." The officer nodded, then looked again at Rick, squinting slightly. "Wait a second. I think I know you. There's a warrant out for your arrest. Step out here and show me your ID." Caught off guard, Rick obeyed without hesitation. He stood, walked into the hall, and in an instant, the officer shoved him against the wall and slapped handcuffs on him. Moments later, Randy returned from his patrol, confused by the scene. The second officer grabbed him, pinned him to the wall, and cuffed him too. As they stood there, bewildered, Randy finally asked, "Why are we being arrested?" The answer was cold and direct. "You're not being arrested. You're being robbed." The 2 imposter cops led Rick and Randy to the basement, bound and gagged them with duct tape, and then began their work. For the next 81 minutes, the thieves roamed freely through the museum, stealing 13 pieces of priceless art. Before leaving, they destroyed the security footage and vanished. Rick and Randy were found unharmed the next morning, still tied up in the basement. Despite countless suspects, credible theories, and a huge reward, the thieves were never caught. If you want, I can now add emotion and pacing markers like pause, whisper, emphasis, so your AI voice sounds truly human. That will make it perfect for narration. Do you want me to add those next?